What if I told you that one of the largest and wealthiest companies in the world is currently offering a GIS job that pays only a few $1,000s above the US median income? Well, after I did some research seeing this post on Reddit, I had to take a look around and see if this was real, and it appears to be that yes, this is the case. So, this is a post about somebody's experience being reached out to by a recruiter that is offering a GIS position, a temporary contract GIS position, which may or may not come with benefits. I can't tell by this post or some of the others I've seen online. That is offering a job to update and edit GIS data and is currently offering a compensation of $20 to $22 an hour. Now, when you do the math, that comes out to about $45,000 a year US. Now, on top of that, this position appears to be located in Austin, Texas, which is rapidly growing and quite an expensive city to live in here in the United States. So I had to ask myself, is this the worst job posting in GIS, or is this actually a symptom of a larger issue in our industry? Now, you're probably wondering what the company is that's offering this, and it appears to be a job posting from Apple to update and edit data seemingly for Apple Maps. Now, it's not to say that Apple as a company does not value geospatial or its GIS employees, as you can see here from some other job postings on their website as of the time of this recording. They certainly do, and you can check the compensation numbers for these different roles here. Vastly different than this specific job posting that we're discussing today. But this highlights the big issue that I want to talk about, at least a few of them. And let's start with the first one, which is this issue of pay disparity and the difference of GIS job postings in our industry. So you can see here that we're talking about one job that is paying $45,000 on a contract versus some jobs that are paying into the six figures or multiple six figures in some cases. Now, GIS overall, as I've talked about before, there is sort of a pay disparity issue when you compare it to other data centric fields, but that's not the core issue we were talking about today. I really wanted to highlight the core problem around these entry level positions and effectively being underpaid and very difficult to start to scale up your career after that. Now, this role, it looks like it has some interesting aspects to it. Seemingly, you'd be developing data that goes into one of the largest mapping products in the world. And what I specifically find interesting is some of the skills that it asks for. As you can see here, it discusses the need to work with your desktop GIS systems, things like ArcGIS Pro or QGIS, but it also actually mentions some skills in Python and SQL, which I found sort of strange that it would be asking for these technical skills for a very entry level role, and it's willing to pay such a low dollar amount for that. But I think it highlights kind of a big issue with us is first of all, if you're just trying to get into the industry and you're looking at a job posting like this, it might seem like a great way to get your foot in the door, right? Unfortunately, this is way underneath what the average is for, say, GIS analyst or sort of a entry level GIS role, which I find a little bit disappointing because of many different things. But I think we should be compensating people fairly based on the level of their skill set and their ability to do the different work that's in there. And especially when you're talking about adding GIS skills plus very technical GIS skills, this is way under market value for what it should be. And unfortunately, this is going to impact a lot of people just getting into the industry. If you see a job posting like this, does this deter you from studying GIS or starting your career in this field? Or do you keep going and say, hey, maybe this is good and I can work my way up to some of these larger pays, these larger salaries in the future? But I think despite all the issues with the low dollar amount, we have to look at one fundamental question here, which is why would such a large company be willing to offer such a low compensation for such a role? And what it comes down to is some of the value around this. I've talked a little bit about this before, this concept of being in the technician trap, right? This is where you are effectively taking data, moving it, and doing something. You're completing a project, and your value is very much tied to the completion of that task. Now, it's not to say that these tasks aren't valuable. Of course it is. And you could see that having up-to-date data on one of the largest mapping platforms in the world, of course, is extremely valuable. But what happens is that your value is not being tied to what you're delivering or creating. Your value is very much tied to your ability to process up to 300 GIS data points a day. And this is reflective in what Apple thinks the value of that is. You are being compensated to deliver this product, this good, right? That's effectively what's happening in this job posting. And unfortunately, that is really just the simple dollars and figures with it. And unfortunately, that's what it boils down to. It's an input for an output, and that's all this is limited to. And that's one of the biggest limiting factors in GIS career growth, I think, is tying your value to an output, right? You're simply delivering an output or a project or something like that. We know, and I know, and I've reiterated this many times before, is that your value goes well beyond your ability to deliver a project, a web map, a map, this, that, or the other thing. Your value is in your spatial thinking and your strategic ability to deliver those things. But you have to tie that value to what you're doing in your job, and this job does exactly the opposite of that. Now, when you look at this other job posting, this geospatial data engineer post from Apple, which the compensation for this role is somewhere between $178,000 and $312,000, which is many orders of magnitude larger than what we see in the GIS contractor role. But we see here a few points that we can actually pull out and understand how we're tying value to the deliverables that we're actually creating. Now, if you read the job description, I'll put the section I'm referring to here on the screen, but it's not that much different from what you're doing in the other role, in this, GIS kind of contractor role. Your job is to ensure the quality of data for Apple Maps, right? This sounds like the same output, but let's break it down and look at the individual pieces here that actually stand out. So this job post discussed a few different things. Discussed the ability to develop quality checks and metrics on large scale data. Can you ensure the quality of large volumes of data that's going through? Can you collaborate with many different teams to understand the requirements and the data that they need to produce that? Teams like data scientists and analysts and other business partners inside the organization. What's your ability to bring geospatial data into other systems, things like AWS or cloud services, working with big data technologies like Spark? How can you make geospatial data work in these distributed computing systems? How can you optimize spatial queries for performance and scalability across many different tool sets? So basically, how can you produce geospatial data that's very easy to query across any tools, Python, SQL, desktop GIS, whatever that is? How can you produce those systems that allow you to do that? You're creating systems and you're documenting those systems and you're creating these data sets so that people can carry this forward and continue to do that. And most importantly, you're ensuring the data quality and accuracy through automated testing and validation. Automation is a key word that I would call out here. Now you can look at the technical skills that are here, things like cloud, distributed computing, tools like Spatial SQL, even Postgres and PostGIS, tools and systems like data warehouses. There's a lot of things here that you can start to take a look at. But it's strange that we have such a big difference between the salary here versus the other job at the seemingly same company. But what are the pieces that we can pull out that are make it specifically applicable to your career and help you grow? First, I would say is that you need to identify which jobs are making you serve as a technician and which jobs are helping you become a strategic part of that business. A technician basically takes problem or product from A to B, right? That's really all it is. GIS sometimes gets stuck in this trap. And if you are in this position, I think that's one area to take a hard look at. I've heard the term button pusher. I like to call it the technician trap, right? This is not that anything's wrong with you and you are only as good as your button pushing is. You're kind of stuck in this spot where that's what the role requires. So that's one place to take a look at is, are you stuck in this technician trap where you're taking something from A to B and moving it out? Second is understanding the skills that go along with that. I've consistently advocated for using and understanding cloud systems, automation, things like Python and SQL. All those technical skills are really good, right? The things that they enable, things like automation and scale, consistency, deliverability, all those things I mentioned from the other job post, that's what they enable, right? So those skills are great, knowing those skills, but you can see these both job postings are asking for skills in Spatial SQL, even in the same systems like PostGIS and stuff like that. You can do the same with Esri, right? I'm not to say that you can't do the same with a desktop GIS or a traditional GIS system or or you have to know code to do any of these things, right? If you can do the same things with different systems, that's totally okay, right? It's that the system is a little bit irrelevant here. But I do believe that some of these skills will help you scale those things up, and the outputs that it produces, the ability to automate, scale, create repeatability, all those different things are really important, right? So that's the other part, is understand the skills and then the outcomes of those skills, right? If you're just using SQL to validate data points, right, you're still in the technician trap, right? That's still a level that you need to grow up. But this is the third and final point that I think is the most critical here. And you can see that it specifically calls out understanding requirements from other teams or businesses or systems or different things that you need to understand strategically to bring into the processes that you're doing. And that's probably the biggest thing here, is that you're taking all of these other things and ideas from your collaboration, your work with others, and bringing that into your work and ensuring that that is the value that you deliver. And that's when I talk about things like strategic value. That's really where this comes down to. How can you take your work and make it strategically valuable to many different parts of the organization? And that's really where you start to break the technician trap, right? You can not only just produce work and do the things that you want, but that work is extremely valuable to other teams that you're working with. And you've worked very closely with them to understand exactly what they need. That's kind of the dream, right? That's where you should try to achieve to. And I think this dream is very achievable for many of you here, right? You are all very smart spatial thinkers. I know that. I talk with people every day that are in various stages of their career. I know you know your stuff, right? You understand how the world works, how spatial data sets fit together, and all these different things. And I think most importantly, how do you collaborate that outside with various different teams? That's something that you can build as a skill set. What are the unique attributes of your skills that you can help carry forward and help collaborate with all these different areas and different teams, and really start to scale that up and bring the work you're doing or the skills that you know or skills that you can add in, and start to position yourself as not just a technician, but as a strategic value creator with geospatial data. No, no, that seems kind of like pie in the sky and like all these different things. A lot of that just requires you positioning yourself, your career, your work in a different light and in a different way. And that can immediately help you start to scale up. There's two different challenges here if you need to. Now, when you boil it down, if you want to work in a job like this one, then the geospatial data engineer, there's really two things that you need to focus in on. Right. There's the technical gap, right? Understanding the technical skills that you need to get there. And this could be, like I said, any technical skills. If that's adding Esri enterprise skills or different distributed computing or cloud native geospatial, that part is a little bit less relevant. Understanding those skills to help you get there is one key component. Where are you today, where you need to go, and then delivering the skills that you need to get there. But the other part of it that I think is even the bigger part is the career positioning, right? How do you position yourself as somebody who's strategic and delivering strategic value? How do you take the projects you've already done and showcase that you're already doing that in your current work? And what are the specific problems that you're really good at solving, right? Understanding that core positioning. You're not just a GIS analyst. You are a spatial thinker that enables others to bring spatial data into their everyday work. It's a simple change, but it can make a world of difference when you are trying to grow and change your career path. Now, I built a program that works a little bit around these two different concepts. If you're interested, that's called the Modern GIS Accelerator. You can check that out in the links below. It helps you both learn different skills and how they fit together, but also helps you understand how to position your career and grow that forward. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out below. But to bring all this up, I think there's two really important things. One is that when you see GIS jobs like this and you're thinking about applying, understand your value and the value that you're going to bring to an organization. It's not necessarily that you have to settle for a job like this. You have to understand and position yourself in the right way to get the jobs that you actually want. But second, for us in the larger industry, I think we have to start thinking about the work that we provide, not in the outputs, right? We're not people that take product from A to B, transform it, and get it turned into something new. We're not simply limited to our value being the outputs of what we create. The outputs of what we create are the strategic value and the information and insights that we can bring. And a lot of that comes with the collaboration and understand the needs of others and starting to work in tandem with these different teams to understand what that is and helping take the skills that we already have and bring them to a wider set of people. Now, that requires some advocacy on your own part, but also if you're from other teams or other areas, or if you're a leader in the geospatial industry. I would advocate for you to advocate for yourself or others and start to really position us as really important in the world and what we're doing. A lot of the issues that we're facing in our planet, in our world, and all these different things, and I think you've heard this from many different areas, are really important. But that comes from you advocating for the great work that you're doing and positioning that to help other people and really collaborating and understand their needs. And if we can do that, I think we can start to see a shift in terms of us just seeing as a technician versus us as an industry and individuals being really strategic stakeholders in what's